Hi, and welcome to the Rule of Carnage Kickstarter Roundup for July. We've got a couple of game campaigns, some accessories, and some STL files this month. Going to go straight into the first of those game campaigns, and it is Savage Wastes by James Franzen. So this is a fun-looking sort of junk punk, semi-apocalyptic vehicles-based minis game. It seems to be quite a zoomed-out scale. You've got airships as well as ground vehicles. The campaign has minis, cards, dice, really everything that you need to play the game within the starter pack. Looks like an interesting game. There's a set of rules to check out, online rules, so you can always take a look for free, see if you like the idea of it and maybe back. Yeah, it looks like it's got a really sort of interesting aesthetic. If you're into that sort of grim, dark, post-apocalyptic looking sort of piled up punky sort of style vehicles and airships and all that sort of stuff, I think it's probably one well worth having a look over, because I think that if the aesthetic, if the look of it, the feel of it clicks with you, it's a solid starter pack and a solid offer to consider picking up. Okay, next up for our game campaigns, we've got Sector ALIX by Bishuk. Now this is, I think, quite an interesting one. It's suggested as a tactical RPG. Looking at it, to me, that reads as a minis game from sort of my perspective. Certainly enough in there, I think, to please a minis gamer, let's put it that way. So this is a 12mm scale Sky Pirates, Cloud Pirates sort of themed game, where it's solo or co-op against an AI. So there's going to be lots of sort of pulp, daring do, adventuring going on. 12mm is really cool. It means you can have a very sort of epic, multi-layered story in quite a small space. Obviously, with it being solo driven, sort of solo co-op driven, means you're always going to get a chance to play. Obviously, a certain amount of it's going to rely on how well the AI clicks for you, but certainly the look of it, the idea of sort of Sky Pirates, I think it's a really cool idea. I think that solo games are tons of fun. This is all sort of 3D printable and 3D printing based, so if you're not sort of able to get your hands on that, the starter set might be a bit of a problem for you, but there's plenty of options to get everything sort of 3D printed for you these days. So I think well worth checking out, well worth looking into. I think interesting that both of the games looking at this month are sort of vehicle based, smaller scale, and a bit sort of pulpy and unusual, but yeah, definitely a really cool game, well worth checking out. Okay, moving on to our accessories campaigns. First up, we've got TOPQM Modular LED Miniature Storage and Transport Case by TOPQM. So we have featured a fair few sort of transport cases, transport options on the channel before. I particularly wanted to pick this one up and feature it because a lot of the other ones that we mentioned end up being 3D printed or 3D printable, because it's a relatively easy way to put it out and deliver it. This one is available in ABS plastic, injection molded, etc, etc. So if you don't have 3D printing available, this is a really nice transport case and display case option. So these are cases that are clear fronted with LED lighting within, sort of miniature holding shelves within it, so you can literally have these guys as display cases for your minis, pick them up with a carry handle and use them for transport. Loads of options. Certainly if you've got sort of a sort of skirmish sized game that you play regularly on the move at clubs, pickup games, things like that, this is a great way of having the minis displayed, looked after really nicely when you're not playing them, and then able to just pick up the case and walk off to the club or wherever you're playing. So really nice option, like I say, particularly if you don't have 3D printing available. If you're looking for something sort of pre-constructed, ready-made that you can just pick up, put your minis in and be all set, this is a great option, well worth looking into, well worth checking out. Okay, last up for our accessories campaigns, we've got Veronica Masterclass painting by Blue Brick Art. We do get painting guides on Kickstarter sort of semi-regularly. This one's interesting partly because it's from a first-time Kickstarter creator, partly because a lot of the books we see with painting guides in are very much sort of art books with lots of sort of display pieces from various painters and sort of tips and tricks. This one specifically takes a model you can pick up from the campaign and then takes you through in detail various techniques you can use on that miniature to get it to a certain level, which I think is a really smart way of presenting these lessons, these options, these tips, these ways of doing things, because it's not always instantly obvious how to apply a particular tip, a particular trick to the miniature you've physically got in front of you. And I think by taking you through the various steps on a specific miniature, specific model, and you can apply them, it's an interesting way, I think a really handy way of learning those techniques and putting them into play within your own painting. So I think it's a really cool idea to have a really detailed PDF of all the sort of ways you can paint, all the techniques, all the elements, and an STL along with it to take you through picking up some of those more advanced techniques and taking your painting to a higher level. So a really cool, I think, sort of fully integrated painting masterclass lesson here available from a really neat campaign. Okay, moving on to STL file campaigns. First up we've got Ghosthunter's Firehouse NYC by Illustralia. So Illustralia is a repeat creator that I keep featuring on the channel because everything they do I absolutely love. I think it's so cool. They tend to make building pieces, terrain pieces themed to various pop culture movies and TV shows and things of that nature, along with a handful of suitable minis. This one, no great shock, it's a New York City style firehouse, so there's a strong Ghostbusters reference there. And look, it's a really cool building in that it's a contemporary building, which there aren't enough of, fully featured on the inside. Australia always do lovely sort of internal details within their buildings. It's also got a handful of cool sort of Ghostbuster type miniatures. It's got a vehicle. It's got really everything you need to play out your Ghostbusters miniatures fantasy. So this would work really nicely, I think, for anybody who wants to play out any sort of contemporary set, system or game, for anybody who's looking to play through one or another pulp style narrative adventure with a strong sort of Ghostbusters feel, Ghostbusters theme to it. I think it's a super cool building, super cool mini, as Illustralia stuff always is. I think for me it really strongly suggests a set of scenarios, a set of scenes, a set of ideas, which I think is what great minis should be all about. So well worth checking this one out. Okay, next up for our STL files we've got Arcs Volume 1 3D Printable Sci-Fi Assets by David Sheff Models. Now, on the subject of pop culture referencing STL file campaigns, this one is, I guess you'd call it a selection of scatter train elements, but there's some very, very strong pop culture sci-fi movie references within these minis. There's the pods from The Fly. There's a Han Solo and Carbonite. There's all the sort of bits and pieces to make a particular scene, a particular idea, a particular setting pop. Specifically for me, there's sort of all the bits and pieces for playing out an Alien-style game on the tabletop. So if you are looking to play a sci-fi skirmish game of some kind that's heavily narrative, you want lots of sort of detail and elements, you want all that set dressing for a specific story, a particular sci-fi pop culture story, well worth stopping by, checking out this campaign, seeing which of the elements, which of the bits and pieces is going to work for your specific story. I think there's tons in here. I think it's well worth checking out for all those cool scatter terrain pieces. Particularly, I'll say there's a sort of hollow table in the campaign that you can actually get to sort of light up and show features on it, which is just a super cool idea. Well worth checking this one out for set dressing any sort of detailed narrative sci-fi scenario you've got going on. Okay, next up on STL Files, we've got Deathly Draft, 3 Undead Fantasy Football Teams by Massive Dragon. So, fantasy football, Blood Bowl style teams, yeah, feature quite regularly on Kickstarter. This one's particularly cool because there are 3 separate types of undead teams available on this campaign. You've got a sort of Tomb King style mummies, sort of themed undead team. You've got something that's a bit more on the sort of vampire end of things, and then one that's a bit more of a sort of necromancer style team. So you've got loads of options in here. So any of those sort of themes, any of those ideas appeal. There's everything that you're going to need to play, through star players down to linemen, all the bits and pieces. And these are just particularly nice minis. They're really lovely sculpts, loads of features, loads of character to them. Really everything that you want for 3D printable undead, Blood Bowl, or fantasy football styled team. Well worth checking out if you are a fan of those sorts of games. If you're looking to get into them, looking to pick one up, it's a really easy entry point. Just a small handful of miniatures and you can get playing, you know, right away. So well worth checking this one out and giving it a look over. Okay, next up for our STL file campaigns, we've got Tokugawa Ronin, 3D printable STL samurai miniatures by Forged Path Miniatures. Now again, samurai styled sort of Japanese themed miniatures aren't super uncommon on Kickstarter. I think what's particularly nice about this campaign though is that quite often minis that type end up being very sort of narrative styled single miniatures, not necessarily something you could make an effective warband out of. This campaign's really nice in that it's got at least 5 different sculpts for each of the sort of different major sort of samurai tropes elements you might want, as well as some leaders. So there's plenty here to form a decent sized warband for anything like, say, Test of Honor, but Saga, these would be plenty necessary to form out a decent sized Saga warband. Anything of that level, that size of warband, that sort of scope of game. So well worth checking out if you like the idea of some samurai within a skirmishing warband style size miniatures game. Lovely sculpts, loads of different options, loads of different weapon setups, etc, etc. Well worth checking out and giving a look over. Okay, next up for our STL file campaigns, we've got Toka Cloning Station, 3D printable platforms and minis by War Scenery. So this is another repeat creator and another of my sort of favourites on the channel. This creator regularly puts out sort of decent table-sized filling scenery, along with a good number of miniatures, plenty to sort of have a warband skirmish style sort of scope of game on the pieces that are being put out. And this one's no different. So this is sort of listed as the cloning station, so it's quite a high sci-fi looking piece, but it's a really nice bit. It's sort of got elevation, walkways, all those bits and pieces for playing with sort of some fun, unusual rules that you're not necessarily always going to get the most juice out of with just sort of quite generic terrain. You're going to get sort of cover rules, elevation rules, all the sort of fun and interesting things, I think, that make mini systems, good systems, really pop. The minis themselves are sort of non-specific sci-fi. They've got a bit of a feel of a Star Wars adjacent universe. So if you like the idea of some minutes agnostic sci-fi gaming, if you just want a really cool sort of table filling sort of display piece of sci-fi scenery that's going to be really playable and really get into some interesting rules and some interesting usage, strongly recommend stopping by, giving this one a back. Okay, last up for our standard STL file campaigns, we've got Army of Darkness Skeletons by Monolith Arts. So Monolith Arts here, again, a really reliable repeat creator. always puts out lovely stuff, and this one I think is a particularly nice set. So this is undead, skeleton themed, sure, but plenty of minis here to fill out a good sized mass battle force. More than enough really for anything, whether it happens to be old world, hobgoblin, anything of that scale. And the minis are really cool. There's a bit of a, I would say it's on the sort of Dark Souls end of the vibe. These are skeletons that are very threatening. They're not the sort of slightly comedy sort of stop motion animation style guys. It's not your old Hammer style skellies. These guys are sort of nasty, vicious, really cool looking, really stylish, really strong look to them. Strongly recommend if you're into that sort of Dark Souls style vibe idea, if you want a fully put together undead army of a good size where they're all going to sort of look well together, look good together, because they've all got a similar style, a similar sculpting. Strongly recommend stopping by this one, giving it a look over, and probably a back. Everything you're going to need, from cavalry to infantry to characters to chariots, it's all in here, and all looking really cool. Okay, last up, we've got a Pay What You Want campaign, and this month's Pay What You Want campaign is going to be Alchemist House, Pay What You Want, Only 48 Hours by Tialja Design. Well, as the title of the campaign suggests, when this video goes up, this campaign is going to have, well, only about 24 hours left. So if you are interested, you're going to need to get onto it straight away as soon as this comes out. It's a neat little campaign. It's for a single piece, and like I say, an alchemist house, which is to read a sort of general fantasy house. It's a good sized building, plenty of options for playing in and around. This is one that you'll get loads of use out of, loads of options to it. Well worth stopping by, swinging past, picking it up for a reasonable price. At the moment, the Kickstarter hasn't yet funded, and with the very limited time that's on it, I'm not sure if it's going to get there. The funding goal is low enough that it only requires one person to, chuck in a chunk of cash, but with it being a Pay What You Want campaign, it's going to be sort of touch and go to whether it gets there. If you're interested, if you want to support a smaller creator, swing by, give it a look over. It's a nice piece. It's well worth having in the library. Hopefully maybe back them, help them, get them over the line, or just check them out and pick up a nice piece for a reasonable price. Okay. That is it for July. A handful of interesting campaigns there. It's been a fairly regular turnover of Kickstarter for the last month. Lots of bits and pieces I haven't necessarily picked up just because they've fallen in between roundups. Nothing sort of super electric that anyone's missed out on. If there is something like that that I think people really need to see, I'll still pick it up. Really nice that Kickstarter now has its late pledge option within Kickstarter. So there have been some that have been late pledgeable over the last month. I've chosen not to feature rather than not being able to. So we might end up having a sort of late pledge section in future roundups. We'll see if there's anything interesting that applies to. For now though, as usual, please swing down to the sections. If you've backed any of these campaigns, go down to the links, come across the Discord, tell me what you backed. While you're down there, hit on the like and subscribes. Please swing by mine or Mike's Patreon and subscribe to us, or just swing by one of our websites and pick up one of our games to help us keep running the channel and doing what we're doing here. As usual, there's going to be a game design chat this Saturday between myself and Mike Hutchinson. I'll be back next month for another roundup. For this episode, however, of the Rule of Carnage Kickstarter roundup, it's going to be a thank you and goodbye. So thank you and goodbye. Bye bye.